The silence was not my choice. For 70 years, it was my shield. My name is Karl Drescher, and for most of my life, that name was a lie I told to survive. My real name is Karl Hitler. I am, or I was, the last living cousin of Adolf Hitler. We shared a grandfather. Our fathers were half-brothers born into the same cramped farmhouse in Waldviertel, Austria. The world knows the monster of the Berghof, the Führer of the rallies. But I knew the boy who picked frogs apart limb by limb in a muddy field. I am 92 years old. The doctors say my heart is a worn-out clock. Before the final tick, I need to tell you the truth about the man who destroyed our world and the family he left behind to burn. You have heard the history books say that Hitler was born in 1889 in Braunau am Inn. You know about the failed art school applications and the bitter years in Vienna. That is all correct, but it is a clean, sterile version. What the books miss is the smell of the house, the damp wool, the boiled cabbage, and the rage that sat at the dining table like a fifth guest. My father, Alois Jr., told me that young Adolf was not a leader. He was a watcher. In 1906, when he came to visit us, he did not play. He sat on a stump near the chicken coop and drew the same crow for 4 hours. When my father asked him why, Adolf looked up and said, "I am learning how to break its neck without making a sound." We laughed then. We thought it was the dark humor of a strange teenager. We were wrong. That strange teenager was a blueprint for a calamity. The first truth I must confess is that we did not stop him because, for a while, he lifted us up. After the Great War, when Germany was on its knees and Austria was a ghost of an empire, Adolf became the voice of the shouting. To a poor farmer's son like my father, the promises sounded like music. Work and bread, he said. Honor, he said. By 1935, my family was no longer scraping mud off boots. We had a proper roof. The local party officials smiled at us. We carried the name Hitler like a golden ticket. I was a boy then, and I marched in the Jungvolk parades. I wore the uniform with pride. This is the part of the story that shames me most. I walked past the broken glass of Kristallnacht in 1938 and told myself it was just politics. I saw the smoke from the distant camps. We all saw the smoke. And we turned away because turning away was easier than losing the roof over our heads. But the name that gave us shelter became our cage. Adolf never liked us. We were the country cousins, the embarrassing proof that the Aryan Superman came from a family of inbred peasants. He cut us off. He changed my cousin Paula's name to Wolf to hide her. When my father wrote to him asking for a job, Adolf sent back a single sentence, "You are a stain on my blood." By 1943, we were pariahs even within the Reich. We were too close to the sun, and we were burning. Then came the collapse. When the Allies swept through Austria in 1945, we did not run. We had nowhere to run. I was 19 years old. I watched the American jeeps roll into our village, and I thought, finally, the lying is over. But the world does not want the family of the devil to explain. It wants them to bleed. That is the second truth I need to tell you. Justice, in the days after the war, was often just revenge with a uniform. The Soviets arrived in our sector 3 weeks after the Americans left. They did not ask questions. They looked at our identity papers, saw the name Hitler, and dragged my mother, my sister Greta, and me into the back of a cattle truck. We were taken to a special camp in Buchenwald, the same gates where Jews in Roma had been tortured, now used to hold the families of the torturers. They called it denazification. We called it hell. For 2 years, I broke rocks. I watched my sister waste away from typhus. My mother died of a heart attack when a guard kicked her for picking up a rotten potato. I was a boy who had never killed anyone, who had never joined the SS, who had only carried the name of a madman. And for that crime, I was sentenced to die slowly in the mud. I survived because I lied. In 1947, when the camp doctor asked my name for the release papers, I did not say Hitler. I said Drescher, my grandmother's maiden name. I walked out of those gates a ghost. I had no family, no home, and no future. I moved to Linz and worked in a steel factory. I kept my mouth shut. I watched the trials on the radio. I heard them talk about the 6 million Jews, the systematic slaughter, the Endlösung, and I realized that my suffering, as real as it was, did not compare. The guilt I carried was not for what I did, but for what my name represented. I had eaten bread while others starved in ghettos. I had marched while others were marched to the gas chambers. That is the third truth. Silence is a debt you can never repay. For 70 years, I watched the historians dig through the ruins. They argue about whether Hitler was a madman or mystic, a genius or a fool. They never ask about the families. Do you know what happened to the rest of us? My cousin, Maria Koppensteiner, was taken by the Soviets and died of scurvy in a prison camp in 1953. My uncle, Eduard, vanished into the Urals. We are all dead. The Hitler bloodline, which once threatened to conquer the world, is a river that has dried up. In America, the sons of William Patrick Hitler, my distant nephews, made a pact. They swore never to have children. They let the line die. They looked at the future and said, no more. I understand them now. When I see the news, when I see the rise of the flags and the chants of the angry mobs, I recognize the rhythm. I saw it in a boy with a crow and a frog. Hate is not born in a bunker. It is born in a garden, quietly, when a child learns that cruelty feels like power. I am telling you this story not to ask for forgiveness. I am not asking you to pity me. I am asking you to understand that the monster was a man, and he came from a family just like yours. And that family, desperate to survive, looked the other way. I am the last one. When I die tomorrow or next week, the name Hitler will have no one left to speak for it. Good. Let the name rot. But do not let the lesson rot with me. Do not let the silence win. If you see the frog being dissected, if you hear the whisper of hate in your town square, do not turn away. Turn toward it. Break the silence before it breaks the world. That is the truth I have carried for 92 years. I am Karl Drescher. I was Karl Hitler. And I am finally free.